Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your detailed forecast update for January 29th, 2025. A lot to get through today, including that tropical low/tropical rainfall depression that's situated offshore from North Queensland at this time. And spoiler alert, even though the rainfall will ease off today, there's going to be a heap more coming through this weekend and into early next week. Tropical lows and tropical cyclones threatening the Queensland coastline, severe thunderstorms across New South Wales, and that heat wave that's expected to unfold again for Western Australia, and some wet weather expected across the Northern Territory and WA. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you're brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into things this morning over in North Queensland. You can see the low pressure system that's driving all of this rain ashore across tropical far North Queensland has organised dramatically overnight. In fact, it rapidly developed over the last couple of hours into what basically resembles a tropical low here. I'm just going to pause the radar loop and really zoom in on this system here. I mean, to the untrained eye, this looks like tropical low/tropical cyclone territory. However, you can see here that the winds are just not representative of that Arlington Reef with winds out of the southeast. This isn't a low pressure system right now. This is just a really well organised and really tightly wrapped rainfall depression here. So interesting stuff, but certainly not close towards tropical cyclone status, that's for sure. But it is dumping some incredible rainfall totals ashore around Belendon, Kerr and Fishery Falls. I mean, just take a look at these, some of the rainfall accumulations here, steady at about 30 to 40 millimetres an hour. In fact, slightly heavier on some of these showers here, and they've been sustained overnight. They have. So for the past 12 hours, these rainfall accumulations have been sustained in these areas of North Queensland. Absolutely no reprise whatsoever. And as such, over the last 12 hours, 300 millimetres has fallen at the Belendon Kerr weather station. Much more rainfall is expected to fall throughout the remainder of today. The rainfall has actually really picked up over the last couple of hours as well, and it is kind of reaching its peak intensity right now in terms of what's currently happening across North Queensland in this area here, south of Cairns down to Innisfail, and the rainfall will slowly head further south and also progressively ease off throughout the course of today. And you can see it here reciprocated on the forecast models. The EastMWF calling for this rainfall to remain heavy throughout this morning, but as we get into the later hours this afternoon, especially by around 3 or 4 o'clock, this rainfall will be pulling away from the coastline, and it will be substantially weaker and much less intense as well. So yes, there are a few more hours of pretty intense and pretty meaty rainfall that's expected to be occurring across the North Queensland coastline, especially around Belendon, Kerr, Fishery Falls, and just the communities north of Innisfail, and it will be heading south towards Johnston and Innisfail as well. So don't get complacent down there. You've got some good falls coming in over the next couple of hours, probably the next 6 hours or so down there as well. But I really doubt Innisfail is going to pick up a further 100 millimetres. However, Belendon Kerr could be, if this rainfall keeps itself up, another 200 millimetres on top of the 600 that's already fallen there. They'll be pushing close towards 800 or 900 millimetres for this weather event, which is really, that came in pretty much as expected. I did say spot rainfall accumulations up to 1,000 millimetres, but the first couple of days of this weather event were quite dry. So as such, 800 or 900 millimetres, certainly some really good rainfall here, and it has caused some flooding problems as well. A lot of the rivers around the North Queensland area, especially on the Cassowary coast, are already at minor flooding. I'm actually surprised that I haven't woken up to moderate or major flooding in any of the rivers. I do expect that to change though. Certainly the Tully River and some of the rivers around Innisfail, I do expect them to get up towards moderate and even major flooding throughout the course of this afternoon and evening, especially, I forget the name of the river that comes out here at Fishery Falls. That river is really kind of throwing up a few alarm bells right now, rapidly rising, and certainly could get up towards that moderate or that major flooding alert. So we'll keep a very close eye on the river levels up there. Showers and thunderstorms expected tonight into the more central areas of the Cape York Peninsula, so inland out towards Chillagoe and Laura, some thunderstorms possible out there. This low pressure system will pull away from the coastline throughout the course of tonight and into tomorrow morning. However, we will still see residual showers swinging around on the southern side of this system here. We'll likely also see some isolated heavy falls moving into the North Queensland Cassowary coast and even up in towards the Daintree rainforest throughout tomorrow, but they will be few and far between. Also moderate to heavy falls from showers expected right along the central Queensland coastline, south of Rollingston through Townsville across towards Ayr, and I think tomorrow is going to be Mackay and the Whitsundays' turn as well in terms of the forecast of that heavy rainfall. I think they're going to be picking up some meaty falls there. Now this low pressure system is going to hold on. It's not going to dissipate completely, but it is going to hold on over the coming couple of hours, in fact into the coming couple of days, and by Friday night we're expecting this low pressure system to begin a phase of organisation here just offshore from the Queensland coastline, pretty much about 2 or 250 kilometres offshore from Cairns. Now there's a lot of details still left to be ironed out in this system, and I'm going to do a detailed forecast update on it in a couple of hours, so stick around for that. Just before we dive into the information on that, I would just like to briefly touch on rainfall accumulations over the next 24 hours across North Queensland, especially around the Cassowary coast, so 24 to 48 hour rainfall accumulations. There is still some rainfall streaming ashore here. Like I said for Cairns in the Facebook post a couple of minutes ago, not expecting anything more than 100 millimetres of rainfall there, down towards Gordonvale, Fishery Falls and Belendon Kerr with the rainfall that's streaming in right now. Up to about 200 millimetres is still possible on top of the rainfall that has already fallen there, and just given the fact that that the rainfall rates are approaching 50 millimeters an hour, it's not actually going to take that long for those rainfall accumulations to amount. Down towards Innisfail, like I said, probably are going to be more on the unlikely side that they pick up more than 100 millimeters. This forecast is suggesting it at this time, but again, I don't really see a world where Innisfail picks up more than 100 millimeters on top of what they've already picked up. Down towards Mission Beach and Tully, probably no more than about 75 millimeters for either location. Cardwell and Ingham as well. Ingham has received some whopping rainfall accumulations as well, as I've been advised. They've probably had close to about 300 millimeters down there, but not much in the way of extra rainfall is expected down to around Cardwell and Ingham, which is good. Not at least over the next 2 days, only about 50 millimeters apiece there. It does pick up again this weekend, which we'll get to in just a few moments. And then inland across the Atherton Tablelands, Mareeba, Ravenshoe, expecting a further maybe 20 or 25 millimeters. I mean, you can see that there's really not an awful lot in the way of showers moving out there, and whatever showers do move through those areas, mostly for the bigger picture, they're really quite light they are, and even though they're slow moving, they're not really dropping an awful lot of rainfall, so the rainfall risk out towards Atherton and Mareeba is kind of obsolete at this time. Not expecting anything crazy in the way of significant rainfall accumulations out there. But yeah, in terms of just the convective picture for this tropical low or rainfall depression, whatever you really want to call it, yes, it's firing up some really good convection around its center. It's still, though, looking like a pretty sad system at this time. It's got a lot of work to do, so let's just jump into that tropical low forecast right now. It is expected to organise on Friday, though, offshore from the North Queensland coastline. It will get its act together through Friday and into early Saturday, but of course what that means is, considering the vicinity it's going to have to the Queensland coastline, it's going to spark up another rainfall dump across North Queensland, and this one's going to be more sort of central Queensland focused as well, because it is going to be a tropical low pressure system. It's going to have a larger area of influence, so rainfall heavy at times is expected this weekend between Cooktown right down towards Mackay, and probably even a little bit further south than that. Let's just get into the forecast hour by hour, day by day right now. The low pressure system situated Saturday afternoon offshore from Cairns, with a heavy force towards the east and the south side of it. Moderate to heavy showers expected to be streaming ashore from Saturday afternoon through Sunday across the Cassowary coast around Innisfail and Tully, and inland towards Belen and Kerr. Some good falls also possible down towards the Townsville and Ayr area. I'm expecting moderate to heavy showers to be streaming ashore around the Proserpine area and the Whitsundays down towards Mackay, and some big time rainfall accumulations possible down here throughout Saturday and Sunday as this low pressure system organises and get itself together. They're going to be in the box seat down there, and same deal with Ayr once again. They're going to be all in the box seats here to receive shower bands, and just lines of showers are going to be coming through to receive to be dropping some really heavy rainfall. So I'm expecting those locations to all be receiving triple figure rainfall accumulations this weekend as this low pressure system spins up. But of course, this is the main story here. This low pressure system slowly organising, and then it makes its passage towards the Queensland coastline. At this stage on this forecast here, making a landfall around Tully as a very weak tropical. I mean, it's definitely not a tropical cyclone at this stage here. It will have some gale force winds around its centre of circulation. I mean, you can see it here with peak wind gusts up to about 100 to 110 kilometres an hour. So it will actually feel like a tropical cyclone, but it's just not going to be organised enough to be classifiable as a tropical cyclone at this time. And considering the eastern weather for the GFS and now the Axis are all saying pretty much the exact same thing, this is the day where I can confidently say, yes, we know exactly what is happening. We know where the system's going to be tracking. We know how much rainfall is going to be coming through. So just to recap, this low pressure system slowly developing offshore from Cairns, and then taking this kind of west-southwesterly towards southwesterly track through Innisfail down towards Tully. And unfortunately, it doesn't go straight into the Queensland coastline. It's going to kind of skim the Queensland coastline and come in at about a 45-degree angle, which means it's going to be providing torrential rainfall for areas between Cairns right down towards Rollingstone and even down towards Townsville. So some really heavy falls expected to be funneled ashore over multiple and quite widespread locations once again. And they're all the locations that have picked up 500 or 600 millimeters from this weather event already. So more rainfall on top of it. The flooding concerns this weekend are going to be huge, that's for sure. So definitely starting February off on the wrong foot up in North Queensland in terms of the flooding risk. You can see the low pressure system Sunday afternoon tracks over Tully, and then Sunday evening through Cardwell, and then it dissipates further inland, but it's going to still have that remnant energy and enough of it to drag in some significant rainfall accumulations for the North Queensland coastline. You can see here through Sunday and Monday those heavy shower bands do continue, finally easing off on Tuesday by the looks of things, but showers still continuing through the first week of February, finally easing off by about Friday or Saturday the 7th or 8th of February respectively. And then looking much further long range, there's not an awful lot in the wake of this system until at least mid-February, when we will enter what we call another high energy period up in the North Queensland area, and that's when more rainfall is going to be on the cards up there. But just to recap, and let's go through it in just a little bit more detail here in terms of the rainfall accumulation. So Saturday and Sunday we're expecting those heavy falls to begin developing, especially Sunday morning we're expecting heavy falls to develop south of Cairns through Innisfail, Tully down towards Cardwell and Ingham. Cardwell and Ingham will be a couple of hours behind Innisfail and Tully in terms of the heavy falls. I'm expecting them to develop for Cardwell by about Sunday morning around sort of sunrise, and then by about lunchtime on Sunday Monday for Ingham, but they're going to be torrential around Cardwell and Ingham, and every forecast model is kind of suggesting that at this time that we're expecting torrential rainfall in this area here between Tully down towards Rollingston, and big time rainfall accumulations are expected in this area here. Don't get me wrong, Innisfail and locations further north, especially up towards Bullen and Kirk, can be expecting up towards 200 or 300 millimeters from this weather event, but considering that the rainfall river basically, I mean, because this is what it is, it's basically just a river of rainfall that's expected to be driven ashore between Innisfail down towards Rollingston and Townsville. The heaviest accumulations are going to be around Cardwell and Ingham, which is quite concerning because a lot of areas in Ingham are already now cut off from kind of the rest of civilization just because of the rainfall that they've already picked up. And considering now that if you take a look at rainfall accumulations, they've got now an awful lot on the card. So this is rainfall accumulations between Friday out towards Monday. So 4-day rainfall accumulations between the 31st of January and the 3rd of February. And this basically covers the bulk of the rainfall that's expected. Because this low pressure system is going to be slow moving, it's going to be tropical in nature, and we're talking about far North Queensland, these rainfall accumulations are going to be huge. So starting from north and heading south as we normally do, Cairns expecting about 100 millimeters. I think we'll get closer to about 150 or 200 millimeters of rainfall up in Cairns. I think the forecast is kind of underbaking how much rainfall they're expecting there. Locations further south, Bullen and Kerr pretty much guaranteed to pick up 300 millimeters, and then it's going to be 300 millimeters plus right down to Townsville. I reckon Innisfail will get about 300 millimeters, Tully probably closer to about 450, potentially up to about 500, and then around Cardwell and Ingham, it is going to be on the rainfall in these areas. It is going to be go time. You can see Cardwell expecting about 700 millimeters on this forecast. That's a very valid number here. Down towards Ingham, probably about 500 millimeters. I actually think Ingham might pick up a little bit more than that, but just considering the fact that they've got mountains towards the north of them, they might be slightly protected enough just to kind of wring out the absolute worst of the rainfall accumulations, because they are going to be coming in from the northeast, and I think Ingham might be just in that kind of protected zone as to where they might not get the absolute worst of rainfall accumulations, but certainly between Cardwell down towards Lucinda on the coastline, rainfall accumulations will be widespread above 600 millimeters, with spot accumulations here, as you can see, well above 1,000 millimeters, and you can actually see a lot of rainfall accumulations above 1,000 millimeters. Hinchbrook, that's the name of this island here. I reckon places on Hinchbrook Island, I know it's an uninhabited island, I'm expecting some rainfall accumulations on Hinchbrook Island to be well in excess of 1,000 millimeters, and it's a shame we don't actually have weather stations on Hinchbrook Island. That would be really interesting to see what rainfall is expected, or what rainfall actually falls there. But along with a storm tide, the amount of rainfall that's coming through, expecting flooding in this area here between Cardwell and Lucinda as well. I think that goes without saying. But all of these risks and warnings that are going to have to be made note of, I'm going to be talking about in great detail in the forecast update that will come out just a few hours behind this one. Further down the coastline towards Moontanir, Rollingston and Townsville, expecting about 200 to 300 millimeters in those locations, probably a little bit more the further north you get. I wouldn't be surprised if Rollingston picked up about 400 millimeters of rainfall. Townsville probably about 200 millimeters of rainfall. Egg probably close to 200 millimeters of rainfall as well. Bowen, I'd say probably about 100 millimeters of rainfall, and then around Proserpine, Mackay, and the Whitsunday is somewhere between sort of that 150 to 200 millimeters, especially around Proserpine, because they are going to be in that box seat to just have that kind of rainfall and that shower highway that's going to be streaming ashore. That you guys had that about a month ago with the rainfall event that went into Ingham and this sort of area here, Ingham and Cardwell. You guys, even though you were so far away from the low pressure system that was causing all of that rainfall, you guys just had that kind of highway of showers streaming ashore here, and Proserpine ended up with, I think it was 700 millimeters in the gauge, and that's not entirely unlikely at this time. I mean, obviously they're not going to be picking up 700 millimeters, not as per what the forecast is suggesting right now, but accumulations up to 300 millimeters are entirely possible and very plausible as well at this time. Just for fun's sake, let's take a look at what the axis is saying, and this is why we don't normally trust the axis when it comes to rainfall, because whilst they do actually paint a reasonably accurate picture here along the North Queensland coastline, I think it is still a little bit more on the bullish side. I'm certainly not saying for a minute that 1,300 millimeters is impossible. Unfortunately, with a weather event like this, 1,300 millimeters over 4 or 5 days is actually entirely plausible now around Hinchbrook Island, Cardwell, and down towards Ingham. But I do think that is a little bit on the higher end, especially when you do look out to sea here and you see these rainfall accumulations, these numbers here up to about 2,000, 2,100 millimeters. You can kind of see that the axis is a little bit of a model that likes to pull a couple of boogies out of its nose every now and then, and you can see it's not actually a reliable forecasting model to use when we're talking about rainfall from slow-moving low-pressure systems across North Queensland. Even though it can nail the rainfall for North Queensland, and it has time and time again, it absolutely nailed the forecast of the rainfall depression just gone for far North Queensland, but you can see that it also makes some pretty big lapses of judgment as well. Anyways, more on this weather event, more on this for North Queensland and also Central Queensland in the forecast update coming out later on today. I'm very excited to be covering this system really closely, so again, make sure you are subscribed if coverage on this system is your cup of tea, and also coverage on all things tropical cyclones and tropical lows as well. Just to wrap up the Queensland side of things, I would just like to briefly talk about showers and thunderstorms for New South Wales and the southeast of Queensland. It was a hot day yesterday in Sydney with heat indexes up to 43 degrees around the western suburbs, very warm indeed, and a couple of thunderstorms also blew through the area as well, some of them severe at times. We're still expecting severe thunderstorms later on tonight into tomorrow morning around the Tamworth and Armidale area, extending north towards Inverell, Wollongara, and across the border and towards Warwick and Stanthorpe. A couple of thunderstorms also possible out there, but the southeast Queensland area around Brisbane and the Gold Coast, not expecting anything in the way of severe thunderstorms, that's for sure. Not anything in the way of thunderstorms, to be honest, either. Thursday afternoon, another round of severe thunderstorms expected around Tamworth and Armidale as well. These ones could be a little bit beefier by the looks of things tomorrow afternoon, with some large hailstones, heavy rainfall and damaging winds, powered by a low pressure system that's just going to be situated offshore in this surface trough here, providing some really good conditions for thunderstorms across the central towards the northeastern parts of New South Wales. Again, no thunderstorms expected across the border into the southeast of Queensland, though. More thunderstorms are possible on Friday morning as well and into Friday afternoon, starting off Friday morning between Sydney right up towards Taree. A couple of good thunderstorms expected around the Newcastle, Forster, Taree and Kempsey area, and then Friday afternoon inland severe thunderstorms possible around the Armidale and Tamworth area before they race inland across Inverell and then later Narrabri, Moree, Lightning Ridge, and we'll get a couple of good thunderstorms possible out there. And then it comes down this weekend, nothing in the way of significant thunderstorms expected, a few showers here and there for the southeast of Queensland, also into the northeast of New South Wales. We'd be seeing 25 millimetres a day on both Saturday, Sunday and into Monday for the Northern Rivers area of New South Wales, which is much needed rainfall up there. They're certainly starting to fall a little bit behind in the rainfall, as you can see. A couple of places currently registering on that kind of low kind of scale for, or minor scale for the drought intensity, and you can see soil moisture values now a little bit below average as well up there. So some rainfall up there will be very welcome, that's for sure, and certainly they'll be looking forward to it. So I'm happy to be the bearer of good news here for the northeast of New South Wales, especially into the Northern Rivers, with about 20 or 25 millimetres a day coming through this weekend and into very early next week. That will add up to some pretty decent rainfall accumulations, or at least I do hope that they'll add up to some decent rainfall accumulations up there. That does it for New South Wales and Queensland. There's not an awful lot happening in Victoria and Tasmania either, so we're going to give them a miss here and head over towards Western Australia, where it is hot once again. Perth expecting a top of 41 degrees today, powered by that West Coast trough, that pesky West Coast trough. Man, we're just not getting a break from the heat right now. I couldn't describe to you how sick I felt when I saw that extreme heat warning again fire up on my phone yesterday or the day before. That was sickening, that was. I was not looking forward to this at all. I knew it was going to be a hot week, but I didn't expect it to be kind of as hot as it was last week for the Perth metro area. So 41 again today, good day for the beach, but make sure you do slip, slop and slap. It's going to be a very warm one indeed. Thursday is slightly cooler still though, top of about 39 or 40 expected in Perth. It's going to be a lot warmer out towards the wheat belt and into the central west as well. And then through Friday, it's going to be the wheat belt's time to shine, with temperatures up into the early to mid 40s expected there. Killarney and Dalwallinu both tops of 44, Morrawar top of 45, and as you get further north out towards Murchison and Gascoyne Junction, you're expecting tops of 46, 47 or 48 degrees up there. So it is going to get very hot very quickly, that's for sure. Perth though on Friday, a bit of a reprieve to the heat, 33 degrees, and that slight breeze coming in from the southwest, which will keep things a little bit cooler. And then this weekend cooling down just in time by the looks of things for next week. Still though, it will warm up next week once again, 38 degrees Wednesday the 5th of February, and it looks like it's going to stay quite warm throughout the course of next week for the first week of school, especially further inland into the wheat belt, expecting tops up to the mid to high 40s in fact across parts of the wheat belt. And then take a look at this next Friday, Saturday and Sunday on the 7th, 8th and 9th of February respectively. You're looking at tops into the high 40s here, 49 pushing 50 degrees around Onslow, and then across towards Roebourne and Karratha, 48 to 49 degrees. Very, very, very warm indeed, that's for sure. And it certainly looks like it's going to be February's time to shine. The February heat is certainly going to get in here and really start baking parts of Western Australia, that's for sure. But you guys up in the Pilbara can have all of it. We do not want it in the southwest, that's for sure. I'm sure a lot of people are already sick and tired of summer, that is for sure. And just to wrap this video up, I would just like to briefly talk about the tropical situation for the Northern Territory. I have been saying over the last couple of days, get excited, because there is rainfall on the cards there, especially for the west coast of the Northern Territory up around Darwin, about 300 to 400 millimetres on the cards over the next 14 days. The majority of that is going to be falling once February kicks in here. You can see the majority of the rainfall actually falling into the first week of February and into the first week and a half of February actually, and that's going to be starting off from a tropical low that's expected to develop in the Gulf of Carpentaria later on this weekend, which could go into Mornington Island as a weak tropical cyclone by the looks of things. There isn't an awful lot in the way of forecast model support for this system, though. I mean, you can see the eastern wave is kind of the only storm, the only model that kind of calls for that, and I'm not overly sold on the fact that a tropical cyclone is going to form in the Gulf of Carpentaria, especially with a tropical low that's now set in stone for North Queensland. I don't think this tropical low is going to end up forming, and it certainly won't get towards tropical cyclone status, that's for sure, but no real bearing that has on the forecast. It's just going to be a little bit of rainfall for parts of Queensland and also across into the eastern parts of the Northern Territory, which I don't think is overly likely at this time. But then as a low pressure system develops across interior parts of the Northern Territory and Western Australia, they're going to get this big moisture band into the first week of February by about Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, and then onwards from that for the next couple of days, swinging into the Northern Territory's coastline around Darwin. And you'd be looking at probably about 50 to 60 millimetres a day of just steady rainfall to round out the first week and a half or so of February here, which is much better than what the initial forecasts were saying just a few weeks ago, and that's certainly some very, very welcome rainfall indeed. I can imagine for parts of the Northern Territory. I mean, just take a look at this. For the first week of February, you can see rainfall accumulations are really going to start to pile up there, and then into the second week of February, we're going to be seeing rainfall accumulations much higher than that still. The other forecast models haven't overly jumped on board with it yet. The GFS still calling for some good rainfall in the vicinity of the Northern Territory, but in terms of some really good high-end kind of sustained rainfall for a good couple of days, it's not really that consistent on the forecast models at this time. However, I would certainly start to get your hopes up now across parts of the Northern Territory. That drought does look like it's going to break there, and the wet season is finally going to come, get this, in early February. So it certainly has been a very, very slow start to the situation up there, that is for sure. And then over in towards Western Australia, we've been talking about these tropical lows that could spin up in towards tropical cyclones offshore from the Cocos-Keeling Islands and Christmas Island or whatnot into the first week of February. And you can see here, they do still spin up here on the forecast, far away from the WA coastline. You can see no threat to land either, and they kind of just meander around. They could get towards a respectable intensity, actually up towards category 2 or 3 strength status on the Australian cyclone scale, but I wouldn't really be getting your hopes up for a photogenic tropical cyclone deep in towards the Indian Ocean, and certainly no risk of an Australian land impact either. You've also seen that tropical low spinning up over the Northern Territory by now as well on the forecast model as well. Here it is. I mean, in terms of the plausibility for this, though, it's certainly not even worth time of day at this time, because you can see between other forecast models that nobody's talking about it at all. It's just the Eastern Wave that's being really bullish about it. And whilst it is a possible scenario that could happen, especially at this time of the year with the brown ocean effect, it's not looking likely enough for me to be able to give it time of day in a forecast update like this, where we are pushed for time. I really do wish I could cover everything around Australia and every weather story, but it just wouldn't be feasible in these forecast updates. Anyways, that is all that I have time for today, for this morning. There will be another forecast update releasing in probably about 6 hours from now as well on the Queensland situation. We're going to go really into depth with that tropical low, the current about it, and what the forecast is also for that system as well. So make sure you are subscribed for that. Leave a like on the video as well if you haven't already, and make sure to leave a comment as well to give me a detailed weather report for your location. I'm very keen to hear and see photos of how much rainfall has happened up in the North Queensland area, so flick me over an email or follow me on Facebook and flick me a message over there. I'd be more than happy to and be able to have a look at what's actually been happening up there, that's for sure. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. The names are on screen right now. Again, I could not run this show without them, and their support is much appreciated. But that is all from me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.